Demonstrating some skills there. Thank you so much for that, Kevin. We're looking at our snowfall totals here from early November to January 19th. The departure from average, -4. So we're near seasonal in terms of, well, over that span of time, I should say, for Toronto in terms of snowfall. Today, it's interesting, we've got an easterly flow, and with Lake Ontario and still some open water, most of Lake Erie is frozen over at this point, so it does reduce the probability of the lake effect, but more so on the west end of Lake Ontario. Watch for a couple of centimeters of snowfall through this area, so Grimsby through Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, likely to be picking up some snowfall, so travel on the QEW may be slick at times. Cold, light snow, yeah, but the light snow's been down to the southwest. And again, that lake effect that we just talked about is more of a localized effect, right, from the wind. Toronto this evening, -5. We have clear conditions for the most part. Again, the winds from the east are switching direction. They're actually backing so that there'll be more from the southwest as we head in through the next couple of days. And the temperatures will begin to rise as well. This evening, -5 in Toronto, -5 in Hamilton. Again, but this is the low pressure system I mentioned that's just skirting by here. That's down through the south and west, and then off it goes. There will be another bout of weather through that exact region, actually, a little bit later on, too. But this low pressure system to the north brings us some flurry activity through the weekend, and then it merges, or tries to merge, with this low off the Atlantic seaboard. How that influences our 7-day forecast. Saturday, some flurries. We're not looking at a lot here, but notice how the temperature rises temporarily and then comes back down to what is more seasonal. And then Saturday, with more of a system coming through, may see a centimeter of snow. This is not going to be a massive snowstorm. And, you know, timing-wise, I guess it's good that it's a Saturday versus a weekday. winterpegwear.com. Great domain and great product. So congratulations on that. I think a lot of people will benefit from it. Let's take a look at our conditions. Cold yesterday, -6 at Pearson International. Today we've got an easterly flow off of Lake Ontario, and that's resulting in some lake effects. So watch on the west end of Lake Ontario for the potential for some snow. This system snow is reaching just down into the south and west. Notice the cold temperatures though, but we're going to be changing the wind direction, and then the temperatures will start to rise. So when we look at today's snowfall forecast, again, localized around the QEW here, watch for a bit of snowfall, but trace amounts for most of the 401 corridor from Hamilton. The forecast this afternoon, -3 in Toronto. Again, watch for that little bit of flurry activity in Toronto, but more so snowfall as you get into places like Grimsby and Hamilton, Dundas, up toward Burlington and Oakville. Well, we do have Saturday's temperatures here sitting at 1. We have some snow in the forecast. It's not a big snow, maybe 1 centimeter at most. The temperatures do begin to drop off. Notice the wind chills return into the -teens. Some cold air coming back for us, but for the time being, a little spell of warmth builds in. I think the consensus really around here at the Weather Network is that Kevin has a pretty good gig, doesn't he? He gets to go out there and have fun every day. Mind you, he has to deal with the cold. So there's that. But we do have, in terms of winds, not so much in the way of wind, but however, we do have enough to see possibly some lake effect on the west end of Lake Ontario. So watch around Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, and Grimsby, Stony Creek, some snowfall today. The winds will shift direction, though. Notice that the winds are not terribly strong necessarily, but that wind shift is what will start to usher in some more warmth, and then the winds do pick up Friday evening, and we will see some snowfall down through the southwest of the province again. For us, though, on the other hand, just some flurry activity expected for Toronto. Daytime high of -3. And in terms of what we will expect in Toronto, the temperatures will rise above the freezing mark, but overall, the temperatures next week begin to drop, and we're back into wind chills in the -teens by next week. So -3 this afternoon in Toronto. Watch for some flurries. Again, there's not much in the way of snowfall to be had here. Keep in mind, Lake Ontario is not completely frozen over, which is why it's more favorable with the fetch as part of the issue here too, getting some snowfall, versus Lake Erie. A lot of Lake Erie, being one of the, I think, the shallowest of the Great Lakes, is largely frozen over at this point because we've had some cold down into the southwest around Lake St. Clair. It's not lake effect, it's from a system that's coming through, which then skirts off into the Atlantic provinces and moves up, brings Halifax and St. John's some snowfall. Then we have another series of low pressure systems sandwiching us by the weekend, and then this one on Sunday comes through, possibly bringing us another spell of winter weather. So temperature wise, 1 degree on Saturday in Toronto. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And I can think of an area, say the GTA, that has a lot of bridges, right? Some good information there from Jacqueline, as always. But when we talk about our temperatures, Tuesday we were at -6 for the GTA, a little colder further north. And that's kind of the same pattern that we see today, where it's warmer in the more urban centers, and then further to the north up, say, Barrie Way, Orangeville, temperatures will be in the -teens. But we've got that easterly flow that continues for today. That will result in some snowfall, and I'll show you why in a moment. Then we have this low pressure system tracking off through southwestern Ontario, and the winds are going to be shifting direction more from the west or southwest getting into tomorrow. But notice how that impacts the temperatures, and it brings up our temperatures. The reason that we have some snowfall in the GTA and down into Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, and Stony Creek is because of the lake effect. Largely, Lake Ontario has more open available water at this point, not having been frozen over quite as much as Lake Erie. But in this particular case, we've got the fetch, we've got the temperature range difference between the temperature of the water and the air aloft at about 1.5 kilometers up. And so really everything's kind of favorable for that. -3 in Toronto. We do have some flurries expected. Overall, the pattern is one where we see the temperatures warming. By Saturday, we're up to 1 degree, some flurry activity expected, and then begins the drop-off. This may be a sign, though, of what we expect to be happening end of January and early February with the cold spell and the cold snap, so the big change of pattern. That may be the indication of that beginning, because the temperatures clearly are following suit there with that pattern trend.
I'm going to throw it back inside the studio, but hey, I got to play a little bit of hockey here. Back inside of the studio. Who's got the puck?
Nice skills there, Kevin. Temperature-wise, this is good backyard rink maintenance weather, actually. -3 this afternoon in Toronto, so keeping it cold. We do have a spell of slightly milder temperatures, but briefly for the weekend, and then the temperatures dropping off, and we're back into the -teens next week. So for the time being, want to mention a couple of features. Low pressure system down through the southwest, bringing snow to Windsor, 3 to 5 centimeters there. And then Toronto and the west end of Lake Ontario today with the easterly winds. We do have some lake effect. Winds overall not that strong, but it's enough with all of these conditions coming together that we may see some snowfall. Toronto flurries, more so in the way of snow down toward Hamilton and around Burlington, Oakville, Stony Creek, seeing maybe upwards of 3-ish centimeters of snow. So we can see that we've painted that area in for that particular reason. Nearly all of Lake Erie is pretty much frozen over at this point. So 2 different things going on, the lake effect and the system or synoptic snowfall down through the southwest. Suffice to say that by the time we get to tomorrow, things calm down, the winds shift direction, meaning that the temperatures begin to warm. It's temporary. We will see a low pressure system moving off into Atlantic Canada and strengthening. Big story for St. John's and Halifax. Hills, we're back into the -teens, so clearly we've got a little bit of wind to contend with as we get into next week. As we head up toward Barrie, Saturday some snowfall, but then the temperatures dropping off. At least it's clear here through Monday, Tuesday, so some fair driving conditions for the most part. But we'll see some snow maybe even through the midweek of next week. But the temperatures are up, and then they're back down next week. Thanks so much, Kim. When we look at our snowfall totals from November 1st to January 19th, the snowfall and the departure from average. So, for example, we're above average in Calgary by 19 centimeters. In Toronto, we're below the average for that time frame by 4. So we're near average, let's just say. However, we have some snow in the forecast through today. Now, in terms of Toronto, a trace. But as you head down the QEW, you're going to be running into Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, and right on the west end of Lake Ontario with lake effect. We're going to be seeing some snowfall. Southwestern Ontario is being impacted by a system, so it's not the lake effect. There's 2 different things going on here. Through the south and west, some snowfall, but dissipating tomorrow as we have a switch in wind direction. So that turns off the lake effect we were mentioning here. However, it's also going to be bringing in some warmer temperatures, slightly warmer temperatures. I wouldn't say it's going to be a spell of warmth by any means, but this evening, -5 in Toronto. Notice that the probability of precipitation is pretty low. And this evening, the temperature sitting at -5. It's colder, though, in Barrie at -11, and even Orangeville sitting at -10. So a look ahead now from Thursday, Friday. Atlantic Canada gets some snowfall, Halifax and St. John's to be precise. And then we have some flurries expected for us on Saturday, so watch for that. in terms of flurries. I'm Sheryl Plouffe with your weather update. On the west end of Lake Ontario, some lake effect may result in some flurries around Toronto today. I think the better chance of that would be in Hamilton, Stoney Creek, Grimsby comes to mind, and then it's all easing and ending by tomorrow as we have that wind shift. So today, easterly winds, tomorrow southwesterly, and dry conditions after the snowfall we've seen across the southwest of the province in Windsor and Chatham. We may see a little bit more snow coming that way. And then after this 3-day period, we're going to see the temperatures drop once again, and into next week, we're back into the wind chills of the minus teens. I'm Sheryl Plouffe with your weather update. In Toronto, temperatures sitting at about seasonal. We expect that to be the case today and tomorrow. So overall, we have some flurry potential in the city of Toronto from lake effect, but the better chance of that is further towards, say, Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville. Watch for a little bit of snowfall there. Overall, this evening, temperatures staying where they should be. Again, we're at seasonal temperatures now, but they're climbing. We've got a 1-degree reading on Saturday with some flurry activity expected. Not a lot expected, but look at the temperature trend. Even in Hamilton, back down into the minus mid-teen wind chills next week.